Okay, YouTube, this next video I have for you is a little bit of a special one. I did not start taping right from the beginning because I'm not actually a YouTuber. I've been doing these videos for a few years, but mostly just for my Instagram page, for family, friends, people that know me. And but this video was probably the deciding video that made me choose to actually start a YouTube channel. Because when I posted it on my WhatsApp status, I just had so much response and people just enjoyed it. And so I thought, okay, maybe it's time I should actually put this on YouTube and have a little fun with it. This job starts out with a 250 Series 2 John Deere skid steer. It's a chore machine, and when I say a chore machine, that means it's used to feed animals and in this case sheep. And so it will bring them their hay, it brings them their straw for bedding, it brings their manure away, all that kind of stuff. So it's just a very messy machine. The two issues that it had was it was overheating like crazy, and they were losing a lot of their hydraulic oil, and they didn't know where it was going to. So it starts out with me getting the machine. I took the panels off and realized it was just an absolute mess. There was no way that I could deal with this the way it was. I had to clean it up. It was just way too messy. And that's the way some of these jobs are, and that's okay. It's just the way it is. But this was a terrible job, very messy, very ugly. And so I was making a video just trying to have a little bit of fun with it once I got into it. So I hope you enjoy. All right, I'm done. Well, I'm not done. There's still quite a bit of schmutz down in there. But I can see the floor, which means I can see all the hydraulic lines now. So we'll just focus on the positive stuff. I also got all that out of there. Oh yeah, and that. Whew, that's most of it. It's not perfect, but at least a guy can work on this thing now. Wow, I got so much encouragement from people on my WhatsApp status, I decided to keep washing. Now it's perfectly clean. No, it's definitely not. I just ran out of gas. That's fine, this is good enough. Now I'm going to get this all back together and run it and find out what is actually leaking and where it's actually leaking. And the rads are clean now, so it shouldn't overheat anymore. I found the oil leak, and as suspected, it's one of the lines that sits pretty much right on the floor. So there's two lines running here. It's the one underneath. I can't show you very good, but there's the oil path going away from it. With this all full of manure, I could have never found that without cleaning this out, so that's how important it is to clean this. We're probably going to change both of those lines because these are both lines going to the drive motor on the left hand side, but this one here is not leaking, but it's got a bare spot there where you can see the braids. So I'll probably change them both. Unfortunately, there's another leak. And that one is coming from inside the bell housing. You can see how it's all shiny in there. It's all wet with hydraulic oil. That's bad. It means the shaft seal on that rear pump is leaking into there. So to fix that, I got to pull the pump stack off, change that seal. That should be fun. I am not real familiar with this style of starter. I'm just wondering if these are supposed to have that kind of play there. Well, I'm back on this one for a little bit this morning. I think I figured out why we're leaking hydraulic oil to the bell housing. The front seal on the pump stack obviously is gone out. It's the only way I can see that we're going to be getting hydraulic oil inside there. And so this is a 2-bolt mounting flange on this pump stack. We got a bolt on this side, but that side we got no bolt. So where did it go? When I was pressure washing this, I didn't find the bolt on the bottom, so I'm not sure where it went. But without that bolt there, that pump stack likely can move a little bit. Probably put some side load on that shaft. And now we got a tore up seal. Guess we'll find out. Alright, pump stack is out. And I had to take the bell housing off of there. I had to take the bell housing off because this was all full of oil in here. And that drain was plugged, so it wouldn't let it out. And so this was splashing around and soaking the starter and everything. So I had to get the oil out. To get that out, I had to unplug that hole. I had to get this plate off. And while that plate is off, might as well pull the flywheel and put a new rear main seal in it. So I got one of those coming. And all of that is because the seal in behind here is leaking, and probably was leaking because of all the missing bolts. I showed already how this mounting bolt was missing. This is the pump's mounting plate. When I unbolted the pump stack off of here, there's 4 mounting bolts, but there was only that one and that one. Those 2 were missing. They weren't in there either. So that's 3 missing bolts now. I've been cleaning some of this up already. These are the pump mounting bolts. They have these big spacers on them. And there's only 2, should be 4. So now that we know we're missing those, when we look a little closer, Oh, we got 2 bolts and 2 spacers down there in the mud. I wonder what those are for. And while I was pressure washing this machine, I found that bolt and that spacer down in the bottom there too. So I don't know if this has happened before or what. I don't know what that bolt is for. Well, the nut wasn't on the bolt. I just screwed it on there. It was laying in the bottom too. I don't know if that pump has come loose before and they've replaced these spacers or what, because now I got 5 and I only need 4. So what else is coming apart? Replacing rear main seal. This is like removing locking pins from planetaries. I got it! 2-piece unitized seal requires a special installer. My installer is not the right one, it doesn't fit. It's the right size, but the bolts don't line up. Well, actually, it's not quite the right size. Mine is a, what does that say? JT30042. And I need the JT30040. So that's pretty much standard issue repair right there. Always got the wrong stuff. I got that one too! This is the seal that is the cause of 84.7% of this whole repair anyway. So I better put a new one in there. That seal is crunchy. Oh, and it's broken too. Crunchy and broken. I can't even bend that lip. The new one's nice and soft. And it looks like it's the right size even. Voila! I'm not really into magical stuff, but I think that's how that says. Okay, got the adapter bolted on. Put our new seal on there. Put our driver on there. See if we can thread our pressing bolt in there. Let's squish it in. Should be able to just tighten them in there. There, nice new updated seal all stuck in there. Perfectly straight with the special tool. Yep. Good to go. Now I got to deal with this ring gear on the flywheel. The starter was grinding because the bearing was busted out of the end of the starter, but it also has wore these teeth away. See how it goes down at an angle like that? This is what it should look like, and then it just goes, it's all just wore away. So we got our new ring gear to put on here while the flywheel's off. These are 2 separate pieces here, and the only thing that holds this in place is a press fit. So the way to get that off is you get yourself a 5-gallon bucket. See, 5 gallons. It has to be a T6 shell rotella pail. Then you take your flywheel and you stick it on there, downside up, like so. And now you're going to take your hammer and your punch and you're going to knock on this and work your way all the way around until you get that thing off of there. Hammer, punch. Booyah! That thing is off of there! For the next step, you want to clean this up really, really well, because you don't want any evidence that you installed that ring on there. Now, the cool thing about steel is if you heat that thing up, that ring will expand, and if you heat it up enough, it will expand enough that you can just drop it right on that flywheel, and it'll just get really nice and tight once it cools off. So we need a way to heat this. You can use a torch, but I found a different way that works really good. So you need an oven, but you need like an industrial sized oven. Something commercial, you know, like big enough that you can feed 5 kids out of. Now, I'm not a wife, so that's a tool that I don't have. But I know a wife. So I know a wife that has a commercial sized bearing heater that ring gear will fit in really well. I've done this before, but unfortunately, you have to be a little bit sneaky because wives are kind of like mechanics in the way that, well, they don't really like it when you touch their tools. And especially when you put stuff in them like car parts. They don't like parts like this in their bearing heaters. I don't know why. That's just the way it is. So we're just gonna jump in old trusty Rusty here and go for a little drive. We'll have to sneak into the compound, and as long as there's no wife around, we'll be okay. Otherwise, we'll have to pretend we're doing something else. All right, look at that. Industrial bearing cooker. Samsung. What did Sam sing? Anyway, doesn't seem to be anybody around, but we gotta be quiet because Well, you know. All right, so we gotta put the ring gear in the bearing cooker, heat it up. We got our flywheel here, and so these teeth are tapered on one side. So you have to make sure the tapered side goes to the starter side, which in this case is going to be facing upward. So we have to put the taper to the up way. Now, this is the old ring gear. I've got the new one in the bearing cooker already, right there. So I just gotta get this thing warmed up, bake. I'm gonna go 350, bake that bearing, set. All right, now I just gotta wait for it to beep, and when it beeps, it'll be up to temperature and I should be able to put it on. Now, if you've never seen this done before, you're missing out on one of life's great wonders. You remember with the air hammer, I had to beat it off of there. It looked like it came off pretty easy, but they're actually usually very, very tight. You could beat it back on there with a hammer too if you could get it started, but you always risk cracking them then. Anyway, if we do this right and get it hot enough, we should be able to just plop it on. And once it cools a little bit, it'll be on there as tight as can be, but no hammering, no nothing. Okay, we're up to temperature. Let's see. Isn't that cool? Alright, see, now that that thing is on there and cooled off a bit, you can't move it. It's tight. That thing will never come off. So, we're done. Okay, I better get back to the shop. I feel like I'm running out of time. The hair on the back of my neck is standing up.
Oh, hey!
Ah! I don't want to talk about it. Guess I'm gonna have to put my own commercial bearing heater in the budget. I need a bigger tool budget. Alright, so the flywheel bolts have to be torquealized, 120 pounds a feet on this machine. So you gotta go with your Ford Dyno. In this case I have the electronical digimeter style. So that's what I use. But if you put 120 pounds of feet on the end of that bar, that motor just wants to rotate, so you got to stop it from moving. And it's pretty tough to do it with the motor running, so I just jam a bar in there on the new ring gear teeth, so it can't, jams up against there and can't turn, and then you just torque away. Okay, once your feet are all pounded, then you can install your drive coupler. In my case, those couplers are 8mm 10.9s, so we set the Ford Dyno to 30 pounds of feet, and snug them all up. Next up is the bell housing. Now the mounting plate for the pumps. Hydraulic pump mounting plate is in. Now people ask me all the time, Ray, how do you do such and such a job by yourself? That's a two-man job. How do you travel around and do these things without a second person? Well, my answer is always the same. You find a way to do it. And that is what separates the men from the boys. Let me show you. This is a good example. Right there I got a bolt that goes through for the motor mount in here. And that bolt has to come through from the bottom. There's no provision to be able to put the bolt in from the top side. It's quite a long bolt. It's like 6 or 6.5 inches long. Has to come in from the bottom. And that bolt, to get it in, I gotta lay on my back underneath this machine and in that hole. So I cannot hold that bolt on the bottom and hold the nut on the top and screw the nut on. Impossible. So where do I go with this? What do I do? There's nobody here. It's just me. There's nobody, there's no second hand. Well, I got to figure out a way to do this myself. All right, if I set that nut on there and put the bolt in from the bottom, as soon as the bolt hits the nut, it moves. And that doesn't work. I got to be able to thread it on there. So something has to hold that nut from moving. So I took my big bar, jammed it underneath this cross pipe on top of the nut, and then took a piece of board, jammed it underneath there to pry up, which on this end then pushes down and holds the nut. And then I could crawl underneath there, put the bolt through, thread it on, and there you go. You got to think on your feet. More often than not, there is a way to do a two-man job with one arm. Training it is the same problem. I can't be holding a wrench up here while I'm holding the ratchet underneath on the bottom side. Like, I would need to have arms like 12 feet long. And I'm tall and skinny, but not like that, okay? Just calm down. So again, what you do, you take your wrench, you put it on your nut. You go underneath there with the impact, and when you hit that bolt, the wrench will swing over until it hit the side of that mount, and then it gets stuck there, can't turn anymore. So now the wrench is holding itself against that plate, and you can just tighten it right up. So there you have it. That's how I do all these two-man jobs by myself. Gotta use your brains a little bit. Okay, the pump stack is bolted back on. Man, those bolts underneath there are really hard to get at. They're really tough to tighten down underneath there, the way those brackets are. But anyway, now I just have to put the hoses all back on, put the 2 steering linkages on, put the starter in, and then I can bleed it, run it, check for leaks, go from there. Okay, got all those lines back on there. Man, I wish I'd looked at this a little bit closer. I had those motor lines made up the same as what the old ones were. But the old ones had all these crazy bends and steel things, whatever, and they wrapped underneath the motors and went to the back. Well, here, look. All these weird things. Of course, you can't have that remade without doing a bunch of welding and all kinds of stuff, so that wasn't an option. So I just had regular lines made up. Anyway, those 1-inch hoses are really tough to bend around those corners and stuff. I do not like that. I mean, it's fine, but I could have did it better. I wish I... Anyway, next time I'll do it better. I also clean up all this wiring back here. So that's a little bit nicer than it was. Still looks like a bit of a rat's nest, but it's better than it was. So now I'm ready to put the starter back in, over there. Deep inside this hole, right to the back, over to there. It's a really nice place to work. But hey, at least this starter is only a 2-bolt flange, so there's only 2 bolts to get at, which means there's only one nasty one, which is better than some of them that have 2. And then they got it all rebuilt for me, put new bearings in there, cleaned all the oil out of it. The oil was a big problem, as well as apparently there was water in here and it was all rusted up, so that's bad too. That's probably from washing it originally to unplug the radiator. But anyway, we'll get that starter in there next. I got it! Alright, I got all these hoses in here, and I got the linkages back on, and I cleaned up this wiring. I added a clamp right there instead of they had zip ties to hold the wires, and so I put a nice clamp on there, and I fixed up the clamps here and did all that. That's one of my pet peeves, is people that take stuff apart and then they just put it together with wires and everything just hanging everywhere. Man, that bugs me. Take an extra couple seconds and tie it up properly so when this stuff is all moving, you don't have issues with rubbing through. Whatever. Alright, now it's battery time. Now, I had that battery out so I could wash it, and then I put the battery back in so I could run it, so that I could see where the leaks were, and then I had to take the battery back out so that I could do all the fixing. And now I have to put the battery back in so I can run it and double check my work. But the first time I did this, I took it out like a man by hand. And that's how I got that free nail polish there. Pinched my fingers, squished it. Pretty good. There's a tool for taking batteries in and out, but I'm usually too lazy to go get it. So this time I'm not going to be lazy, and I'm going to go get the proper tool. I guess I better clean those up first. Get my DeWalt. Auto battery terminal cleaner upper. There, get the crusties off and make it a little shinier. Put the battery in with the non-finger squisher pincher. Look at that, eh? So easy. Well, where's the... I didn't put the new ground cables on yet. What do I do all day? Oh, there's just more and more stuff here happening all the time. I can't keep up. Got it full of oil. It's time to run it and see if I can blow oil all over the place. Well, we're getting the skeleton all covered up here. I couldn't find no leaks, so I gave up and we'll just put her together. Look at all this new hardware in here. Look at all those nice new bolts. Oh man, I took this thing apart and the bolts were all such bad shape. It's one of those things, minor details again, but for 20 bucks worth of bolts, you can put all new bolts in here and make it look nice and make it a lot easier to take apart next time. And it goes together easier now too. I wouldn't always change the bolts, but, whoop, dropped one. I just didn't want to put that stuff back in there. Ooh, I better hurry. Daylight's running out. Well, I just finished doing a rad flush because the coolant that came out of here was a little bit dirty in the bottom side, and because we had overheating issues. So I did a nice flush, filled it up with fresh coolant, brand new Rad Cap because the old one was bad. Yeah, that one was not going to hold pressure very well. Got the overflow overfilled. That cap is busted. Boop! New cap. Threw the skid plate back on underneath, so that's done. Couldn't find any more leaks underneath all that stuff after all the running and driving and messing around. So I got 2 shields left, one on each side. Well, there we have it. That one is all done. Looks like this customer gets his buggy back for the weekend. Going home. That's it for today.